Anin Bonjour. Welcome, my friends. I am your host, Tim Fontaine, and this is The Laughing Drum, television so deeply and profoundly Indigenous, our scripts are written in beadwork. We have got an exciting show tonight. The Red Power panel is here, primed and smelling like smoked moose meat. But before we go to them, as always, let's see what's been happening on the news. We begin in Ottawa and the continuing saga of Liberal MP Jody Wilson-Raybould and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. If you're not familiar with this thrilling tale, you are in for a treat. Gather round, young ones, and let Mush and Tim get you up to speed. First, Liberal MP Jody Wilson-Raybould is shuffled, some say demoted, from Justice to Veterans Affairs after the sudden resignation of fellow MP Scott Brison. Then the Globe and Mail publishes a bombshell report alleging that Trudeau's aides attempted to pressure Wilson-Raybould to intervene in the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin. If true, it's a pretty douchey move because that company is facing corruption charges over allegations it did something crappy so it could do business in Libya. Days later, Wilson-Raybould says, "See ya." In the days following her resignation, the Liberal story for why keeps changing.
As I said, I was surprised and disappointed by Jody's decision. This is not something that was consistent with the conversations we had around her decision to continue serving in this government as a cabinet minister, and they weren't consistent with the conversations we had over the past couple of days.
The latest speculation came from the chair of the Justice Committee, Liberal MP Anthony Housefather. He said that Wilson-Raybould was shuffled out because she did not speak French.
If Scott Brison had not stepped down from cabinet, Jody Wilson-Raybould would still be Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Brison! Also, it's kind of her fault. Then Trudeau's political BFF, Jerry Butt, says everything is fine, nothing to see here, but I quit. Nothing wrong with that, right? And then the country's top bureaucrat appears before a committee investigating the whole thing and says we're all thinking something is wrong and someone is going to get killed.
The matter was never discussed at Cabinet. Never. So she was not giving advice to Cabinet. She was not advising the Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, Wilson-Raybould isn't saying a damn thing but has a lawyer. So, what have we learned? Sweet but we appreciate the drama and we can't stop watching. Still in federal politics, our esteemed and still freshly crowned Indigenous Services Minister Seamus O'Regan faced backlash after posting a photo of himself looking all pensive and stuff in what looked like a private jet. O'Regan deleted the photo, saying it had become a distraction. Instead, he's vowed to fly over every single First Nation in the country as a show of support. Godspeed, Seamus. Godspeed. And finally, in white people getting Indigenous stuff news, Alberta Premier Rachel Notley has been gifted a headdress and a Blackfoot name at a powwow in that province. She joins former Prime Minister Stephen Harper and current PM Justin Trudeau, who received similar honors from the Blood Tribe. Now, we are not Blackfoot, so I don't feel like we should comment, but that doesn't mean I can't gesture. We'll be talking about these topics with the Red Power panel when we return from this short break. Don't even think about going away. The doors are locked from the outside. All right, welcome back to the show, my friends. And TV's nichiest team is here, the Red Power panel. This week, the Red Power panel is comic and Ojibwe Elvis Jerry, the Big Bear Barrett, funny person and official mustache bearer Sasha Mark, and Indigenous stand-up artisan, organic and single source, Don Lavan. Welcome to you all. All right, guys, you heard in the headlines. Our first topic is the continuing saga of Jody Wilson-Raybould and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. As you all know, she resigned from Trudeau's cabinet on February 12th in the wake of media reports that she wouldn't be pressured into intervening in the corruption and fraud case against construction and engineering firm SNC-Lavalin. I'm so excited about this. It's incredible. But what are your first thoughts on this whole story? Because it really, really blew up.
Well, as you know, I know nothing about international law and how it affects the corporate world here in Canada.
Why are you here? That's why we brought you in.
But, well, good for her. She wanted to stand up and tell her truth.
If true.
If true. And Trudeau's been called up on the carpet over it, so it's all, blown up in everybody's faces here. And as I predicted, the Trudeau government is under so much scrutiny now that who knows what's going to happen in the next election. I predicted that he's going down. That's what I heard, anyway.
Get your bets in now.
But she, now here's a rumor. I love rumors and gossip.
That's what this
Here it
is
is.
all about.
That's right. The laughing gossip. I heard now that what she's doing, she's not happy with the Trudeau government, and she may cross the floor to the Conservatives.
Get out. You heard
How
it here
about that?
first, folks.
There you go. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. If that happens, we want royalty checks. Sasha, what do you make of this whole drama, this whole political drama?
What do I make of it? Indigenous women not being able to speak. A storyline I've never heard of before. What? I never heard of that one. But I don't know. I don't know if Justin can rebuild the relationships he's destroyed, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Oh! Don, follow up on that one. She's not saying much like someone
That's
else
just
we
water.
know.
I'm sorry. I was hoping that was a much stronger drink. What do I think about this? Oh, it's just so sad, but I think it's wonderful that, crybaby Trudeau can have something else to be noted for.
Not a single tear shed in this whole drama.
Right? When are those taps going to turn little faucets?
I like a strong woman.
Yeah.
One that can actually carry me around when it comes time for bed. But no, I like a strong woman, somebody that is not afraid to speak her mind. And this woman is so educated and has proven herself time and time and time again, so that if something has come up in politics that she cannot stand behind, that she cannot support, then I applaud her for walking away from it.
Yeah. Okay, guys, let's get serious for a second here.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
If you could choose a breakup song for this whole situation, what would it be? Personally, I like He Stopped Loving Her Today by Conway.
Yes, I'll love you till I die. Oh, Ernest Monias, maybe
Somewhere along those lines. Sasha, what would be a good song for this?
Never Get Back Together by Taylor Swift. Is that the song? I don't think.
Shake it up.
Yeah, shake it up.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Don?
I'm here without you. I'm here without you, babe.
We don't have the royalties and credits for that.
We'll bleep that out. Maybe. But speaking of Trudeau, you think he's going down, but how do you think he's handled all of this? Because his story has changed several times. First it's Scott Brisson's fault, and then this is all a surprise to me, and she should have come to me, and there was all of these, like the story seems to have
Changes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of his hand? Does he look like he's in charge of this scandal?
No. And his right-hand man there left the scene, exit stage right. Just gone at the first sniff of trouble there. So now Trudeau's on his own and trying to make excuses and come up with different storylines and whatnot. And it's turned into quite a soap opera. Not nearly as big as anything that Donald Trump has done, mind you, but and as we were saying earlier, Canada's a small country compared to the United States. So our drama at Parliament Hill is a little bit smaller.
It's the most boring drama, probably.
Pretty much, yeah.
It involves engineering firms and
it's the most boring version of House of Cards. Yeah,
which Jody Wilson-Raybould was compared to Frank Underwood by Maclean's magazine. Yep.
I like that part.
Hey?
I like that part, how she was referred to that, because
It's
he was
very-
pretty deadly in that show.
Yeah.
And then we found out how deadly he was in real life.
Well, then the flip side of that is, do you think she's in charge of this? Do you think this is in some way a calculated move by Jody Wilson-Raybould?
I wouldn't say it was like a calculated move. I would say that it was probably like years of watching patterns happen over and over again, and then being like, well, you know what? This isn't going to work well for me. What do I need to do to protect myself? And so. Yeah.
Okay, so looking at the news coverage of this, because it's just as confusing as the story itself, or just as dramatic as the story is itself. But there are some that suggest that how the media is handling this with unnamed sources. I haven't seen this many unnamed sources since ever in a story, condemning both government and Jody Wilson-Raybould. But some have gone so far as to say that the coverage is sexist and racist, or that she is being treated in a sexist and racist way. Do you think it goes that far? Like, do you see any of that in what you're seeing in the news?
I think the way they were trying to describe her and some of the terms that were used when, trying to describe her was sexist.
Yeah. That she was like she was difficult to work with, or things like that. Yeah.
Whatever the quotes were that they used. And here I go again. My mother would kill me. Trudeau didn't see that. He didn't hear it. And if he did hear it, he turned a blind eye to the sexist comments that were coming towards this strong woman that should be held in a high regard and as Attorney General, like with so much respect. And he didn't apologize until after the fact, until it was pointed out to the media. Hey, maybe, this is a sexist thing.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, sorry, we didn't mean to do anything.
But a lot of okay, so here's the other thing. There's a lot of Indigenous people who, prior to this scandal breaking, were very critical of Jody Wilson-Raybould because she was a part of government. They were saying, if she's in there, it's not for Indigenous people. She's there for herself, or she's there for Canada. She's a Canadian leader now, not an Indigenous leader. Flash forward to the past couple of weeks, the scandal breaks, and now everybody's banding behind her. What do you make of that?
That's something I watch for in organizations before I work for them, is that I see if there's a high turnover of Indigenous people that have worked there. And if there's a high turnover, then I will most likely not apply working there, because to me it tells me I don't have a very long lifespan. Either I have to sacrifice my authenticity and conform to whatever idea they have of me, or I have to be labeled difficult and hard to work with, when I'm not those things. I mean, look at me. I'm right here at the Red Power panel.
And you're very, very difficult to. Sasha, no, but what do you make of the fact that everybody's sort of banding around her now? What does that say about the Indigenous community or this situation?
I think that there's a lot of mistrust, and when we have Indigenous folks working in establishments like the government, that when we see somebody in a power like that, we're very quick to being like, you're in a position of power, and how is this going to reflect on the Indigenous community? So, I think people really gravitate when someone rebels against the government, and they're like, okay, this is an Indigenous person I support. But when they see someone interacting with the government, especially when it's attached to like a Liberal Party, Conservative Party, or any kind of party, they're always very wary about it now. They're like, what kind of Indigenous people? Because we've been hurt by Indigenous people too in positions of power like this as well. Hi, Perry Bellegarde,
Was that shame? Okay, I've heard people suggest that this whole situation is somehow harmful to reconciliation. Jerry, what do you think?
Oh, boy.
Everything comes back to that word, reconciliation.
And I bring it up a lot in this show as well.
I know, and as I've said before, it's going to be 30 years, 50 years down the road, 100 years, and there'll be robots hosting this show, and you're still going to be talking about reconciliation, because it's just an ongoing process. And now, granted, our people are probably the most, the fastest populated. Like we're having babies all the time, so our population numbers are going up, and so watch out. Reconciliation's coming for you in a baby bundle.
Sasha, what do you think? Reconciliation hurt by this?
I think, can you do more damage to reconciliation? I think that just needs to be thrown in the garbage. We need to start with something new.
Well, let's not say reconciliation. How about relations between Indigenous people in Canada?
Reconciliation, it's a long word that gets used a lot, and that I don't know if everybody understands the context behind it. And I think that sometimes people draw on it in a way that it deflects what the actual purpose of what it's supposed to do. And so, does this specifically wreck that? No, it's like a little hiccup in the misconceptions of what reconciliation is. So like a really bad gassy hiccup, like and it's a big belch.
And on that gassy note, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to have more at the Red Power panel. We're going to shift gears and start talking about Rachel Notley and Seamus O'Regan, the new Indigenous Services Minister. So don't go away, because it hurts when you're gone.
Did you know we got the social medias?
Don't lie.
It's true. Like the Laughing Drum on Facebook and follow us on Twitter right now.
All right, welcome back to the Laughing Drum, my friends. Television so deeply and profoundly Indigenous. White girls dress as us and then go to music festivals. I'm here with the Red Power panel, and we're going to move on to another topic involving a Liberal minister. This one is Seamus O'Regan, who is the Indigenous Services Minister. You all know him. I think you've all got the welcome letter when he became Indigenous Services Minister, which is what happens when you're Indigenous. Okay. So he was leaving a community, I think, in northern Saskatchewan or somewhere. And he tweeted a photo of himself sitting in what appeared to be, or what some people said was a private jet, saying, oh, you know, this is a tough file and we've got a lot of work to do, that sort of thing. He gets called out on that, saying this is a little distasteful. You know, you're leaving a community that's suffering and you're flying in a private jet. So he deletes it and said it's become a distraction. Were people right to criticize that?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think the government should support local businesses, the airlines that fly into communities, so that they get an honest-to-God feel of what it's like to be Indigenous, not just for a nice visit to the community and have a meeting with the chief and council, but now imagine you're transporting a casket from from an urban center back home, and the casket is on the plane with you, or you're actually in a stretcher, and this is the mode of transportation that our people have to use every single day. And you know, wherever he was flying in his corporate jet, I don't know if it was a government-funded jet, was it the Prime Minister's, you know, Elvis had jets. He had Hound Dog 1 and the Lisa Marie. Was this just like an extra jet lying around? Hey, Trudeau, can I borrow the jet tonight? I'm heading up to Red Lake. Oh, yeah, go ahead. You know, so I think to get an honest feel for what we have to fly in, he should be flying in the same damn thing.
Sasha, what did you think when you saw this?
One of my biggest rules is to never go on Twitter while high, you know. And he did that, and it didn't turn out well. So lesson learned.
Oh, dang, that was good. Yeah, it just reeked of like, I don't know, that archaeologist who like goes and observes an Indigenous community from the outside, and then from the outside, like, feels like they gain tons of insight and like, oh, well, I watched this community for 12 years, and so like, I'm one of them. You know, now he'll be next in line for his Nietzsche name.
Well, I think, too, that maybe he was trying to impress the community by flying in on a Lear jet, private jet. It's like Superman coming in. You know, everybody rushes out. What is that? Oh, it's Seamus O'Regan. He's circling, and he tips the wings, and he's waving to the Indians. I'm coming to the rescue. Look out. And then he realizes that the runway's not long enough on this community to land his stupid jet, because a lot of the runways aren't.
Yeah.
You know. They're in rough shape.
Okay, if you could fly over any community and tweet one thing, what would it be? Anywhere, not even a community, anywhere. If you could pull a similar move, where would you go?
So many, so many communities, really.
Or places, anywhere.
Yeah.
You fly over the White House and throw shade.
My brother, God rest his soul, was in the Canadian Royal Canadian Air Force, and he used to, on his way from Portage la Prairie to Ontario, buzz our town.
Wow.
Just to let us know he was coming home. Picked me up at the airport. Scared
anything?
the hell out of everybody.
He threw something out.
Yeah, I'd buzz my own hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sasha?
I would go somewhere like a big city, well established. Let's go to New York City, and not on a plane, but via transit. You know, I'll message be like, I'm poor. I can't help anybody here. You know,
Fly on the bus.
Yeah.
Don, where would you fly over?
I want to fly over where the white people are. Yeah. And then I would, you know...
title of a beloved children's book, I think.
Yes,
where the white people are.
As I was flying over it, I would, like, recreate the creation story about, like, what if we landed on their shores and took over everything, right?
Yeah.
It could be a good time.
It'd be like your own personal first contact.
And then, like, as a ward of the crown, I could be like, give me your crown.
I love that. And speaking of crowns, I think we have just enough time for this last topic. This past weekend, Alberta Premier Rachel Notley, we all know, was at a powwow in Lethbridge and was gifted a headdress and a name, a traditional name, by the Blackfoot people. Now, understandably, maybe understandably, I don't know, or I shouldn't say understandably, but expectedly, there was backlash online immediately by people saying, why do Indigenous people continue to give things to non-Indigenous people, especially people with sort of questionable politics, I guess?
I think what's happening is that we honor leaders, and if they're negotiating with our people and discussing important issues and to put in the time, that some chiefs in some communities think it's the honorable thing to acknowledge their leadership. So I can see that, yeah. But on the other hand, I can see, like, I would never ever in my entire life think that I was on, should be honored with a headdress. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, thank you. I give it to somebody that is truly deserving.
Sasha, what did you make of this?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to, I guess, Indigenous people giving questionable leaders headdresses, I wish that it was like a headdress from like Giant Tiger, and like sometimes it was like a plastic bag, but you know, like, did I say that? Oops. But
Dawn?
I like that. It's one of those things where it's like if it is about honoring leaders in their communities, then all of their mothers should have a headdress. No. And they don't. And there's not a lot of Indigenous women who are honored in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a folly on their behalf to not have honored an Indigenous woman too, or at some point in their history had a moment to reflect on it, be like, well, we did this for an Indigenous woman, and so we're carrying on this tradition, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, E for effort, but also A for awful.
Jerry, I'm going to give you the last word. If you could give a headdress to any person, living or dead, who would it be?
Don Cherry.
Oh! That was completely unexpected.
Chief Grouchy Pants, right there. Hey, that's all I'm saying.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you to the Red Power.
Not a moment too soon.
Like, you're not allowed to make those comments.
Thanks to the Red Power panel for coming out. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. We'll see you back here next week. Same Laughing Drum time, same Laughing Drum place.
Too much?
Too much.